race. You can see the red flashing speed marshal lights on the cars while they're stationary. That's a good safety feature, but the race gets underway. Those red flashing lights will flash no longer, although they will for one car, which didn't get away. As you can see the yellow flag there on the right-hand side of the circuit, left-hand side of the picture, is Mark Betts, number 88. In the TGM run car. Let's see who has got the lead though as they head down towards Maggotts and Beckett's for the first time. I think it looks like it's Lee Morgan that's already arrived at Beckett's in the lead of the race. Matthew Booth second, Elliot Mitchell third, and Dan Gore in fourth position. So very much the order as they were on the grid map.
Yep, as you were from the start of the race then, but as we said, can anyone put the pressure on to the race leader Lee Morgan, who was out in front when they came through on our picture? They're just coming in towards the right-hander of Luffield now and on towards the start-finish line, but Lee Morgan is out front there, just starting to make a break slightly from Matthew Booth, who has the attentions of number 11 Elliot Mitchell and also the car behind of Dan Gore to try and keep at bay. And further back there's side-by-side action, which is going to be the form of this 15-minute race as well.
It's sensational, isn't it, that they, from a standing start, can do a 57.48 second lap, albeit the start line is a little bit further down the road than the timing line is, so it's not quite a full lap on the first lap of racing. Now Matthew Booth under pressure there from Elliot Mitchell, the number 11 driver. The hotel manager from Snaith in Yorkshire was on the outside of him there, so he's putting a lot of pressure on. He got the fastest lap in the race yesterday, but the lap record broken this morning by Lee Morgan and Mitchell to the outside as they went into Brooklands. And, well, Dan Gore might capitalise there. He's stuck up on the inside into Brooklands. That puts him on the outside line, though, for Luffield Corner. If he can hold on to this one, it'll be an excellent job. He's using some of the curb to try to do so. And he's still overlapping Elliot Mitchell as they come through Woodcote Corner and up to the line. But he does eventually have to settle for fourth place. So a little bit of scrapping going on behind the leader. Lee Morgan just starting to get away.
Yeah, it's good for us to watch this sort of racing, but it's not good for those in second, third and fourth places, is it? Because with all this fighting already, the man out front, Lee Morgan, has almost got a second lead over Matthew Booth, Elliot Mitchell and Dan Gore. They're your top four. Then back in fifth place, number 42 is Paul Butcher, so he sits there just off the fringes of the top four. And then Rob Wellham, who started this race from sixth on the grid, currently lies in sixth place. But for second place, almost a move there being made again for the second lapping concession. It's going to be the man of number 11, Elliot Mitchell, to try and get through. But Matthew Booth, with arms and elbows, keeps him at bay for second place for now.
He does. So Booth, 65, former Sports Specials champion in 2016, keeps ahead of Elliot Mitchell, number 11 for the moment. Then it's Dan Gore, the economist from London, number 80 in fourth place. It's Rob Wellham, sweeps through there into fifth position. Car number 5, the driver from Suffolk, getting ahead of Paul Butcher then. They were battling during the race this morning as well. Wellham, of course, had a 10-second penalty earlier on for an out-of-position start. He's got ahead of Butcher here, though. Now we need to try and just get his head down and close the second and a half or so up to Dan Gore in fourth position to try and attach himself onto this lead battle. Behind Butcher, you've got Dan Clues up to 7th, so he's made a little bit of progress from 11th on the grid. Dean Warren 8th, then Jack Tomlin and Ed Volkingham rounding out the top 10. But for the moment, let's see if Rob Wellham can get any daylight between himself and Paul Butcher. He's just starting to eke out a few lengths.
Yeah, it certainly is. He's got to close down a couple of seconds now on fourth place, which is Dan Gore. He's still up front with the third and second place guys, although the gap between second and first is down again slightly to just over 0.8 of a second. So Matthew Booth now on the charge, quickest man on the circuit currently, 55.28 is the quickest lap of the race. So Matthew Booth, after that little bit of attention from behind, is now starting to focus on the race leader as they head onto the Wellington Straight. And with Rob Wellham just recently getting past Paul Butcher, he's under attack once again, is Rob. So a man who did a couple of races last year, not as many as everyone else, but Rob may be a little bit rustier than the rest of the field, but he's doing well at the minute, 5th place, but still Paul Butcher right there. And Lee Morgan is off. Lee Morgan with, by the looks of it, right front damage. Yeah, is that a failure possibly on the suspension, or is the wheel off the rim? Just trying to work out exactly what's gone on there. The time off the rim. Anyway, Lee Morgan, race leader, winner of both races this weekend, is out of it, and that makes things absolutely wide open all of a sudden. So it's Matthew Booth now, number 65, that assumes the lead of the race from number 11, Elliot Mitchell, just over half a second behind him.
Dan Gore is third. Rob Wellham is fourth, still about 2.5 seconds behind the leader, but that will give Rob even more incentive to try and catch the top three. You can see on screen now navigating their way through Beckett's and down the Wellington Straight, and they'll be heading towards probably yellow flags because you can see marshals moving to the side of the track to try and deal with Lee Morgan's car.
They may not be able to move that as well, so it could call for a safety car, because if that wheel is off on the right front, the marshals may struggle to move it from where it is on circuit, and it is right in the firing line of where you come off the Wellington Straight. So yellow flags down there, no overtaking at one of the best overtaking places on the circuit, so the likes of those in second and third, Elliot Mitchell and Dan Gore, may have to think about where else they want to pass if they want to get past Matthew Booth. But we'll carry on, just under 10 minutes now in this race to go, and as the leaders head through, the gap between the top two was just 0.3 of a second, so it was coming down anyway between Matthew Booth and erstwhile race leader Lee Morgan, but now it's even closer between the top three as they head their way onto this 7th lap of the race.
That was the 55 car of Nikita Abramov, you could see, rounding out the top 10 positions as we go into the final 9 minutes of this race. Just looking over towards Brooklands, the marshals have managed to move the car, but not very far yet, so still yellow flags at Brooklands. It's just a question of what they're going to do with it next. You can see the yellow flags waving. There's 69 Ed Folkingham, and he's just ahead of the TSR car of Nikita Abramov. There you can see the stricken Lee Morgan car being passed. Folkingham in one of the JFK run cars. He makes his way out of Luffield towards the right-hander at Woodcote, which is pretty much a flat-out kink. Up ahead, you can see going through shot there, number 22, Dean Warren in 7th, and 60, Jack Tomlin in 3rd, the driver that was 3rd in the championship behind Clues and Booth last year. Coming up to the halfway point in this race, and a nice little move there by Jack Tomlin, up the inside of Dean Warren. He goes up to 7th place.
He certainly does, so that's a good fight at the minute between those two. I think just behind we saw Ed Folkingham and Nikita Abramov quite close together, and I think this is a battle we had in race number 2 as well, so they're going to be joined by a few more before too much longer. Down the inside, or trying to defend his place there, is Jack Tomlin to try and keep number 22 Dean Warren at bay, which he does, and now as they head their way through green flags, they can continue to do battle once more in this F1000 race. But quick laps still being turned in at the minute, not as quick at the front to what they were doing earlier on, but still Matthew Booth managing to keep the gap, although it did come down again, didn't it, between him and Elliot Mitchell, as again trying to run side by side on our screens is that battle for 7th place. But Jack Tomlin, again, he's having his work cut out, and can Jack Tomlin try and defend here from Dean Warren? He can. He's going to try and make him go the long way round as they head back onto the Wellington Straight.
As they head up the Wellington Straight towards Brooklands this time, they should... Oh no, they're still going to have a yellow flag because there's a green flag on the exit, but the Lee Morgan car has been moved to a position of relative safety. I can see its speed marshal light still flashing from here, from my commentary box window. Now there's Rob Bailey. Now he started at the back of the grid this time, and he's up to 14th position now. Here's the Tomlin and Warren scrap. Well, Bailey went across the grass actually, just caught the end of that, and he may well have dropped down again from 14th position. We'll see where he is when he crosses the timing line. There's Clues, there's Tomlin, there's Warren. Just behind you've got the Abramov and Folkingham battle going side by side, and there is Booth with Mitchell right behind him. The gap came down by another 0.08 of a second that time to 0.32 seconds now, so there is Booth with Mitchell going with him. Gore can't quite live with these two, it seems, so it looks like it's going to be a 2-car fight for victory with 6 minutes to go.
Yeah, runner-up in last year's championship was Matthew Booth, so he'll be looking to try and get himself underway with a good start. Race 1 wasn't too bad, apart from that 15-second penalty. Race 2 earlier on, which we saw, was a lot better, finishing on the podium. But last year's runner-up and the 2019 champion leads the race at the minute. So let's see if he can defend hard now from Elliot Mitchell. That time through, Matthew responds with a slightly quicker lap, so the gap extends now to almost half a second between the two. But in the tow, Elliot Mitchell brings that gap down once more as they hit the brakes in towards Maggots and Beckett's. Again, different lines between the two, so as the approach into the corner was a little bit wide from Elliot Mitchell, he's hoping that will give him a better slingshot onto the Wellington Straight this time. But I think it's fair to say, Ian, they're possibly dropped now the 3rd place man of Dan Gore.
Yeah, the gap's continued to go out, hasn't it? He is lapping in the 56s, the leader's lapping in the 55s. Best lap of the race so far is, I think, 55.282. The race leader, Matthew Booth. Yeah, he went faster even than Lee Morgan. He did a 55.35 on the last lap before he went into retirement. Into the final third of the race they go. I think Booth's lead might be slightly bigger over Mitchell. This time it is by 0.05 of a second, so not a lot. Both of these two drivers have been front runners for a while. Mitchell last year was 5th in the championship, had a couple of third place finishes as his best result. Of course, earlier on today he finished 3rd as well. Looking at some point, though, you would think to try and get onto the top step of the podium. He's not done that before in F1000 racing. Booth and Mitchell then down the straight, and yeah, it was another 0.6 actually between Mitchell and Gore that time. So Gore really just now seems content on consolidating 3rd place.
Yep, he's well up the road from Rob Wellham, who is about 4 seconds adrift at the minute from the podium, so I don't think Rob can get there. He suffered a 10-second penalty in the earlier race due to a jump start, so he's hoping to finish inside the top 10 on this occasion, which he currently sits in. But the battle for the lead, I think the gap has come down. It has almost halved there, because what was just over half a second is now down to less than 0.3 of a second between the top two. So Mitchell back on the attack here, had a lap to relax and recharge, and now is starting to put the pressure on once again. Again, it's slightly wide into the corner, but he's hoping for a better run down the back straight. So watch for Elliot Mitchell to try and make a move before too much longer. Time continues to tick away now with just under 3.5 minutes left within the race, and we could possibly just scrape 4 more laps by the looks of it. Depends on when they get to the line, but with lap times being around about 55 seconds, they are definitely charging around this national circuit. But for now, Matthew Booth having to defend as the gap gets less and less between him and the man in second, Elliot Mitchell.
Yeah, Booth will be keen to get a win because he didn't win at all during the 2020 campaign. He last won in 2019 when he won the championship, but Mitchell through on the inside. He might not win in 2021 either, because Mitchell goes through there, decisive move down the national straight into Copse Corner, and it was very nicely done by Elliot Mitchell. So now with 2.5 minutes of the race to go, is he on course for his first win, perhaps? 5th in the championship, as we said, in 2020. He's been racing for 4 or 5 years now, and this is the moment that he's been waiting for all that time. But Booth, I'm sure, will not relent in the pressure that he piles on Mitchell over the closing minutes of the race.
Indeed, so Elliot Mitchell now is past Matthew Booth already, starting to put a gap between himself and the second place man. So that was a matter of time for Mitchell to get through, because now he seemed to be a lot quicker than the man that once was the race leader. And let's see if he can go and do a quickest lap of the race. Well, he comes through with 14 laps completed, and that was a 55.7, but almost a second quicker that time than Matthew Booth. So Elliot Mitchell really, really quick at the minute. He's had some good results so far this weekend. He's been on the podium in the previous 2 races, and if he wins this one, he could potentially be leading the championship, leaving Silverstone, especially with the double winner Lee Morgan out of the race. So I think it's the old adage, consistency does win a championship. So to get his season off to a good start here would really put him into good form heading to the next races. But there's still a couple of laps to go. It's not just done yet, because Matthew Booth here again is on the retaliation and going to try and close that gap down once more.
Yeah, and F1000 also does crown a circuit champion each time they visit a circuit as well. And Rob Wellham is the current Silverstone National Circuit champion from the last time they raced here in 2019. He's not going to retain that title, and that is the 67 car, the other Beaver drivers' car off, which is Andrew Wheels. Looks like it's a retirement for both of those cars this weekend, with Lee Morgan also out of it. We're into the last 45 seconds of the race. The last lap board hasn't yet gone out though, so it looks like once again it's going to be a 17-lap race. Here are the leaders heading, Matt, along the Wellington Straight.
Yep, so Matthew Booth again, is he going to be close enough to make a move? He has got one more lap to go at the end of this one, so there is time, but Matthew Booth potentially will want to be a little bit closer than what he is at the minute. that gap last time through, around about 7/10 of a second. Doesn't really look close enough, does he, though, to make a move on to what's going to be now the last lap, because the clock is not yet at 0, so through they go onto the last lap, and the gap between the top two that time round is now almost a second. So you'd read this, that Elliot Mitchell should be comfortable, but if you look ahead, there might be a bit of traffic, there might be some things to deal with on this last lap, but it's looking good for Elliot. He's been on the podium, as we said, in the previous 2 races. He's done a great job to get past Matthew Booth, but it's a race where Lee Morgan could have taken the hat trick, but he had problems a few laps ago.
Yep, so up the Wellington Straight for the final time they go, and it's looking now like a comfortable advantage for Elliot Mitchell. He started the lap just a shade under a second ahead of Matthew Booth, and 6 seconds behind them is Dan Gore. And there goes Mitchell then, turning his way through Luffield Corner for the final time. Just the flat-out kink of Woodcut to go, and then the checkered flag, which goes out now to Elliot Mitchell, who wins round 3 of the Swallow Hill Homes F1000 Championship. He looks like he's pretty pleased with that victory as well. He might be.